go ahead and start. Where'd he go?
Okay, where did the Devin go?
I don't know.
He was going to introduce us.
There he is.
Oh, there he is.
Sorry. Okay. Welcome, everybody, to the WDC Futures Forum. Really excited for you guys to join us today for the Future of Culture track and our second panel of the day. We have an amazing group of leaders here from the district across the arts and humanities, and really excited that you're able to take part in this activation and bring this to DC. I'm Devin Zeidelman, Director of Strategic Initiatives for the DC Economic Partnership. We co-host the event today with the Deputy Mayor's Office for Planning and Economic Development. I know you are here for this conversation and dialogue, which we're really, really excited about. And so without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce Cathy Merrill, CEO of the Washingtonian magazine, a small publication some of you might have heard of. We're really excited today for dividing a global city beyond the monuments. Thanks again.
Thanks, Devin. Oh, I got to have my own here. First of all, if anyone looks tired in the room or on the panel, I'm going to assume that you were at the Nats game last night, including myself. Yeah. So we're going to have a great discussion, but I know it's a difficult post-game day, but an awesome one at that. I have really delighted to make these introductions because I'm sitting up here with three friends, and they have a lot to talk about of things that are going on in the city culturally. And I'm going to introduce them because I want to brag on how awesome they are. So Dorothy Kaczynski, sitting next to me, she's the Vandenberg Director and CEO at the Phillips Collection. She oversees a staff of 194,000 works of art, ranging from here to there. She was appointed by President Obama to the National Council on the Humanities in 2017. She received the Order of the Italian Star for distinction in recognizing her contributions to arts and promotion of Italian culture. She received her BA from Yale and her MA and PhD from the Institute of Fine Arts in New York. And she is an author, a lecturer, and Phillips is doing amazing partnerships and really innovative things in virtual reality and other things that she's going to talk about today. Rahsaan, Bernard, I'm skipping over you for a second because this is the order they're on in my paper. And so I want to look more organized than I am. He's president of Building Bridges Across the River, which I think some people are familiar with that. Some people are familiar with THEARC, and people are familiar with the 11th Street Bridge Project. Rahsaan oversees all of them, so you can give him any title that works. And the ARC, if you don't know, and he can talk about it more, houses a large group. What are you up to now? 14 different nonprofits in Ward 8. And it is amazing. I hope
our beloved Phillips is one of our partners.
One of your partners as well. Rahsaan has a background in health and wellness. He was a health consultant for the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond, also DC WASA, Doctors Community Hospital. He holds a bachelor's in health management from the University of Maryland, Baltimore, and an MBA from Bowie State. He lives in Southeast Washington, and he knows what's going on here in town. My friend Amy Austin was longtime publisher of the City paper. She knows this city like the back of her hand, and she's still publisher emeritus there, but her newest role, it's been a few years now, right? But her newer role is that she runs TheatreWashington, and we really are a theater town. We're going to get into that. She went to GW, so she is homegrown. She's a member of Leadership Greater Washington. She received the John Conyers Advocacy Award for the DC Jazz Festival, and she's really good at bringing people together. So I'm delighted. Thank you all for being here.
Thank
Did
you.
I miss anything?
Well, I forgot to mention I'm on the board of Destination DC.
Oh,
and
Destination.
Elliot would be happier if I mentioned that.
Okay. We have so many visitors, and I always have a little joke about visitors to Washington that I think it's 24 million people a year roughly visit Washington, but what would the number be if we took out 8th graders? You know?
That's true.
But we're here today not to talk about what at the magazine we call the Big W, the monuments in Big Washington. We're here to talk about what's going on in our town and our city and our community. So I wanted to start with something new that we've read about, but we don't know really where it is. Rahsaan, will you catch us up on the 11th Street Bridge? What's going on there, and why is it important to Washington?
Yeah, so the 11th Street Bridge Park is a really innovative project, and I think our team really has been thoughtful about this, and I believe we've done it right. We've started out with equity. We understand. I mean, as you guys have seen in the paper, there's this fear of gentrification and displacement in our city, and we are listed as #1 across the country. And so, in doing this, understanding that the community that's there they need to stay and thrive in place. This bridge park was initially seen as a gentrifying event, a gentrifying thing. Our team has spent the last 6 years speaking to the community. We have some of our members, community members here that we've leaned on their tacit knowledge, really doing over 1,000 meetings, asking the community what they want. And we got confirmation very early that this, if done properly, if equity being in the center of this is the driving force of it, it will be a unifier versus a displacement tool. And so we're really happy to say that we've invested more money in the equitable development plans of the park. We're about $58 million to date than we actually have raised for the bricks and mortar. And so we see now a community that has investments in small business, in housing. We have a community land trust. Actually, there's an article in the Post yesterday. I think, Kimon, you were quoted on that article about certain strategies that we're putting into that equitable development plan to have people stay in that community. So this park will bridge together historically the historic Anacostia with the Navy Yard, bring communities together that have been divided by literally 900 feet of water, which is the Anacostia River. And so in earnest, we look forward to the day where those communities can come together and we can lift the city, make it a more equitable city by bringing those two communities together.
So
We're looking for that to be.
when can we expect to see construction going and see it coming to life?
Perfect question. So we're at about 30% design. And so we've gotten through the right of way. We've gotten some big things off our plate as it relates to checking the box. The city just invested $38 million in this project. So 2021, you'll start to see movement as it relates to construction. And we will invite all of you to cut the ribbon with us in 2023. So we'll have the Bridge Park built at 2023.
Okay. So that's partnerships in terms of, one side of DC to the other, but there's also a lot of exciting partnerships going on. So Phillips is working not only with University of Maryland, but I didn't know it until recently, DC Public Schools. Can you talk about some of the partnerships and how that helps the community? Because I think one of the things here is that just museum experiences in general have changed vastly, and the way you interact with people in the city.
First little mini job in a museum was in New York City in the 1970s. There was no education department. There was no development department. It was like, open the door and, maybe somebody comes. And with increasing insistence, you're right, within the past 10 or 15 years, there's a demand to be responsive, to be engaged in your community, to listen to your community, and that implies, really at the heart of that equation, is to be open to partnerships. You don't do this alone. So whether it's DuPont Underground or our space at the THEARC or working with Refugees International and Doctors Without Borders, we've been in the schools intensively investing. And that's actually interesting to think about the economy behind that a private, not-for-profit cultural organization raises private dollars in order to invest in the public school system that our society has decided to kind of like put on the margins. I think that's a really important investment that most people don't think of. And so we've been doing that intensively for decades in the schools. So when this opportunity came about to claim a space, invest in a storefront space in the newest building on the campus of the THEARC, Town Hall Education Arts Recreation Campus.
That's better than I do.
I can do it.
Maybe you should moderate.
I didn't watch the game.
I could have done it if it wasn't for the game.
It was hard for us. We're cash strapped. We fight for every cent, and we work really hard. But my leadership and my staff and everybody said, we have to do this because it's like living up to the core principles of giving back, of investing in community, of intensifying our citizenship in Washington, D.C.
One of the programs that you do that I think is really interesting is a Create While You Wait, which Children's Hospital, the THEARC, and Phillips. Can you just talk about that for a second?
It kind of links back to Rahsaan's background in wellness and health issues. So we've got this space, and our neighbor, like right there, is Children's Hospital. And we have Apple Tree Pre-K upstairs. We work in 2 schools on the campus and Turner Elementary just up the road with Congress Heights elder facility. We do a lot with the elderly. We do a lot with kids and schools. But what we discovered, because Rahsaan is right, you better listen carefully to your community in order that you're doing something meaningful with your community. And so what we learned is really a game changer in terms of what we do in our education and engagement department, because we learned about the caregiver, the adult who brings the kid, and if you don't have an appointment, you could be waiting up to an hour and a half. So we're there to offer a creative distraction in the most positive sense of the word, to alleviate what could be a tense and fraught moment. We learned about, mold in housing and the urgency of asthma in the community. We're working with Woolly Mammoth on this really bracing play that they're going to perform this month. It's October already, in the Black Box Theater, and it's all about one of the dominant issues that surrounds us there, which is violence in the community. Yeah. And to try to offer a forum, to work with the leaders in the community, to give them a forum, to be good partners. So that Create While You Wait, it sounds so like...
I think it sounds cool.
Well, I always think,
I spend a lot of time waiting. I don't create anything.
Well, and so we have ambassadors in the community, and the one woman who really helps us, works with us there, she says, you're like my lifesaver. On the one hand, she's got, younger people in her household, and she takes care of her elderly mom, and she's found a kind of oasis of sanity, not just with the Phillips, but with the Lynch Meditation Center, and just I don't think you can underestimate the power of the arts as a life-giving, life-enhancing force. So, we talked yesterday when we were all chatting on the phone, kind of prepping for this, and we talked about the importance of arts. You mentioned I have 190 staff members. Those are jobs. And now we hire in Wards 7 and 8. We're really committed to that. We offer, as of 2 years ago, only paid internships. I got that job in the 70s because I had a summer internship, which turned into a full-time job. And we always hire up from our intern ranks. But there's also this more, and it goes back to Create While You Wait. We had this really tough show that's just ended about global stories of displacement and migration. Those were tough artworks, emotionally demanding. So we worked really hard, especially with our leadership of my chief diversity officer, to make sure we were equipping our frontline staff, all of us who gave tours, to be responsive, to make sure we were offering a really, really important, empathetic environment in which to think about tough issues. And I think that's, in this day and age, not a small value.
Oh, it's a huge value. And so is the internships and finding internships in culture. Amy, I mean, building on Woolly Mammoth and that, I think most people in Washington don't realize what an incredible theater town we are. So I'll throw out the stat if you don't know this. We have 92 professional theaters in the Washington area. That means theaters where people are paid to perform. That doesn't count all the community theaters and schools and things like that. And it's really a booming business. Can you talk about that and how that?
Yeah, it's true. So there's 92 theaters in the area, and these we count. I'm with TheatreWashington, and we serve all of the theaters and work with them as an umbrella organization to find things we can do together, ways we can form partnerships, and how to work better as a community. So I think one of the underlying things around this is that there's so many people who work in the industry, and like Phillips. Many of the theaters have educational arms where they're also teaching theater arts, which is, which is one of the many things that's been sliced out of the high school curriculum. So they're performing a really valuable role in reminding kids about the power of their own creativity. We were just cited in Actors Equity Association, so that's the union for if you're working in theater. There's a different one, SAG-AFTRA for movies and television. But in the equity for people working in theater, we were cited as the fastest growing theater town. So we had the most equity contracts outside of New York. This was just cited in April. So I think it's another indicator of what a strong theater community that we are, that people here are working. If they live here, they're working. There's a lot of demand for their talents.
But it's a challenge, right? Because, I mean, how many people here think of us as a theater town? I mean, okay, that's good. 2?
We didn't quite get the majority there.
But, I mean, I think we were discussing this in New York. The theaters are so close together that you think of it that way, and that's sort of true of
When you think
Chicago
of Broadway,
too. It's sort of us, Chicago, and New York, and we're so spread out.
Right.
So, is that a good thing because it's more accessible, or is it a bad thing because people don't realize how much is going on here?
Well, I think there's a couple things. One is there is one concentration of theaters, which is in our downtown. So that includes Shakespeare and Woolley and the National Theater and Ward 1. If you can go up to Studio and Source Theater with Constellation. And the WIT, the improv group, is there as well. So there is one place where there's a concentration, but we were never like Broadway, right? Zelda.
Well, nothing's like Broadway.
Phil Chandler, when she founded Arena, and back in 1958, it was a deliberate move not to be Broadway. It was based on non-commercial theater rather than commercial, and to tell stories that you want to tell as opposed to stories that are going to make money at the box office. So that's a real differentiation that started many years ago. And now what you've got is theaters where people live. So like community partnerships, the theaters are where their communities are. So there's a beautiful theater in Anacostia Playhouse, where Theater Alliance is, that does amazing work. There's theaters in Reston and Herndon. Next Up is in Herndon. And there's a great theater in Tyson's Corner called First Stage. So they get audiences from DC, but their focus is on those audiences that live near them. And that's the kind of community
Capital
that we
One,
have.
I think, is building a symphony hall
Yes, that's
in its
right.
new building. If people didn't know
Right.
that, their new headquarters is including
Right.
a symphony hall. Is that the kind of thing that we will
That's the
see?
kind of thing
Is
where
that a trend that's happening in other places in private
Yes,
symphony halls?
I don't know what other community is going to get a private symphony hall from Capital One. That is a pretty sweet deal. But I think that it's a progression of regional theater where you're going out, like further out to your communities and having professionally done productions and not the community theater that you may have been used to. So they're really, like I said, connecting with the people who live and work around them and often form really meaningful partnerships with community groups.
And for both of you, are there enough people? I mean, I made that joke about 8th grade. eighth graders, but we have the Museum of the Bible opened, the Museum of the Word is about to
have
open
a
across
theater there,
the street, or about within a year going to open. I mean, museum is going down. Is there enough attendance?
Is there enough audience?
Is there enough
Right.
audience? And, you know, you have to compete with Netflix and
I think,
Netflix.
I always feel that more is more. I mean, and I really mean that in the most generous way, that to add more opportunities, more stages in the biggest sense of that word, to more voices, it has to be a positive thing.
Right,
And
I
of course
agree.
there's competition, but I think that it's not a zero-sum game by any means. So my previous home for about 12 years was Dallas, Texas. And boy, is that a different city in lots of ways. But that it's always had a kind of inferiority complex. So how big do you want that check? And they had a lot of people who could write that check. There was that sense of civic pride that was like breathtaking. And I'm not trying to set up a negative comparison, but it took me a long while to figure out, I'm a little slow. Washington is different. It is dominated, the primary currency is in policy and power and politics, and not so much in what we're all talking about. And I think the real value in this conversation is to see the economic impact, the societal impact, and to set up a powerful foil against the idea that it's all about the mall, the monuments, and the federal system. I live here. I love it here. I love working here, and I love that sense of the partnerships inherent in all the different neighborhoods. But it's almost like, hey, Washingtonians, come on, let's take ownership. Let's like embrace this and lift it up and have as powerful a megaphone, which is not easy. You know, I'd need a lot of more Marcom dollars to do that adequately. But I think it's it's the DMV is a really interesting and vibrant economy and a set of neighborhoods. But it's hard to get that word out against that monolith that's interested in kind of another subject.
But it is also, arts are so interesting because it is where we have intersections, right? So it's where the different business communities and different arts communities where they really come together, and even political people. So at all of the galas and fundraisers, this is where our sort of Venn diagrams cross, and how people meet and interact outside of their either government silo or business silo or nonprofit silo. So I do think we need to get it out there.
Foster good relationships.
Good relationships for our town.
Yeah.
Rahsaan, I mean, in talking about theaters, there's still a real lack in Ward 7 and 8. I think you're the only theater there, including movie theater, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, we have the Anacostia.
Anacostia. There's two.
Yeah, there's two, but I mean,
There's three.
Is there
two in a very large space. Has the ARC and I think there's been great changes at Southeast Tennis Center as well. Do you see that blossoming out? How does your center change the community around you?
Yeah, I think it's right in line with Dorothy's conversation about reverberating the message and impacting the narrative. I think what we have done, I think if you were to look at our collaboration, so at the ARC, if you've never been, we're on 16.5 acres of federal Park Service land. We have 203,000 square feet of building space, 14 nonprofits in 5 sectors. And we are the largest social service multi-sector nonprofit collaboration in the country. So we're a model for that kind of collaboration. What we have done, I think, well, is we've opened our doors and our minds to really acquiesce to this silo mentality. And so when you hear about Create While You Wait, when you hear about these programs that engender a synergism that bubbles up so that 1 + 1 = 3, we can then take that message and reverberate it to the community. And so we've done it through our partnerships, but also the theater there has an ICANN technical internship program where we recruit young people in high school, 15 years old, who know nothing about technical theater. We put them through this program. They then identify with theater. Many of them identify with theater. They leave, they matriculate through high school, so this actually helps them through the high school process. They graduate. A part of the program is to come back to be an alumni, so then they have responsibility to teach, right? So the best way of arming someone with sustainable power is to tell them you're going to teach someone once you're done. You're going to give back once you're done. So we arm them with that. And now that message is slowly trickling through the community, and people are hearing about this program and asking about it. So to your point, I think the more we can create narratives of excellence and success and show the runway that we can provide east of the river in a sense that has equity in the center, but also looking at bridging the gap with what's happening east of the river and west of the river, we have a great opportunity. And I'm excited about the runway that we're preparing for them, not only at the THEARC, but everywhere else. And so again, it's about narrative. The more we can get the narratives out of the successes that are happening on our campus and around east of the river communities, the better the investment east of the river will be. And we've seen some of those investments already.
I mean, getting word out about arts programs in general is hard, but it has real payoffs. Art and technology are really, really coming together. So we see like the VR migration thing that you did, which you can talk about. Maybe you can each talk about sort of how technology is just changing our whole cultural world.
Yeah, no, it's true. So a year and a half ago, we were asked to be a institutional partner with Alejandro Iñárritu's Carne y Arena. And I don't know if any of you the tickets were free, but you had to have a time slot because you were going to be alone in this, what I found a terrifying room, where with this VR headset, barefoot on the sand, with buffeted by the sound of Border Patrol helicopters. Anyway, and then he came to the Phillips, and we had to talk about technology and politics.
But this was sold out for months and months and months, and it was a migration experience. Yeah. So you felt what it was like to be.
So it was so powerful. And just recently at the Phillips, during the run of this show that I told you about, stories of displacement and immigration, the partnership with Doctors Without Borders was right there in the first gallery and putting on those headsets, and you could choose a narrative. I chose the one about the doctors working in a Syrian refugee camp. And it's sort of weird, it's like, I don't know, if you've been to the Phillips, the first gallery is like, I don't know, it's all doorways and staircases and like a lot of white noise. So I put this thing on, and suddenly you're in the midst of this heart-wrenching story, and I was really embarrassed because when she took it off, I was like in total meltdown. But especially with UMD, so we've got this multi-year partnership and MOU to explore the possibilities, this asymmetric marriage, I like to call it, between the Intimate Museum combined with the Experiment Station, with this big land grant research.
University of Maryland, College Park.
And it's more about technology and engineering and math there, and they sought out to find the arts in their program. And for us, it offers expertise and students and faculty and thinking about the possibilities of really high tech as a tool for learning and empathy and outreach within a museum environment. Pretty powerful stuff.
So I'm on the board of University of Maryland, and we were so excited with the partnership with the Phillips because Maryland has been weak in the arts, not in the creating arts, but a lot of colleges have art galleries and access to arts. They have a great performing arts center, but in terms of that
it's
kind
still
of
the dream, right?
Yeah, well, right. And so this partnership, it is a belief that students need culture and arts to have a really well-rounded education. You can't have it without it. What's going on technology-wise in the theater world?
In the theater, there's a lot of technology that always happens with theater. The biggest thing is probably the use of projections in the staging.
So Mean Girls, I didn't see Mean Girls, but I heard the background was just projection, right? So you change the scene like this, and the room is...
Right. So it's very innovative. It can jar an audience. It can make you laugh. It can provide sort of atmospheric ways in which flat, stable sets did not. But I think with theater, in some ways it is the opposite of technology, where it's just about being intimate in a room, where you're seeing performers and they're live, and every performance can be different. There's a show coming up at Shakespeare that's written by a young local playwright, Brandon Jacobs, who's got a show called Everybody. But it's the first one of a new artistic director who's there, who's just taken over from Michael Kahn, Simon Godwin, and this show, all of the actors take a new part. They take a lottery, so they each play a different role every night, and the audience watches the lottery, and then they begin. So I think with theater, there is always technology involved, has always been, but more it's about like what's connecting the performers and the audience.
I think the thing about theater is that for whatever reason, someone can set up a camera in a theater and film it, and you can watch it on your television. But it really, really is not the same at all. And you can't really explain why it's not.
Right.
But it's not. Even multiple cameras at multiple angles, or even the baseball game last night, there's something about being there
Right. Yeah, I think
that is what is this experience that we want kids to realize and we all want as part of our city. Because to be a great world-class city, which I think we are, but I think we can be better, means you have to be a cultural capital.
Yeah.
What about technology?
So for us, technology takes several forms. I mean, because of the complexities of our campus, because of the projects that we're running, we see technology as a platform to communicate. We want that to engender and/or precipitate human interactions. So the human experience for us is a big one, especially with a community that has identity in culture. I mean, east of the river families, we've created a platform for them to get their identity, their emotional states, their expressions on a platform that they didn't have before. Now obviously there's 3 theaters, but when we showed up in 2005, we were it. And we still hold the largest. Our proscenium theater is about 365 seats, 404 when expanded. And so we do have a platform where we encourage our communities to come out. But we see technology now as a connector, and that connector is a first step to the logical extension of getting people together, bringing people, and having that shared experience. And so we've not only in our ICANN technical internship program, but how we manage the collaboration, how we manage the partners at our Skyline Workforce Center. Technology has been a big communication tool for us. And so yeah, we want to see a world where technology is the platform that bring human relationships closer, tighter, the human experience more meaningful, not as a separating tool or a tool that allows you to become socially inept. And so we're excited about what we're embarking on technologically.
I want to make sure if anyone has a question, feel free to put your hand up while you're thinking of your question. One of the things technology is having data and being able to use it. So Urban Institute,
Yes.
You've done some measurements
Yes.
of how culture, how the arts impact the kids that you're serving, right?
Yes.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started it. We went on this. I like to call our campus a humanitarian mall, not a strip mall, right? So we have intentionality with partnering and creating synergies. And for us, it's a great opportunity to become the model for the country. And so we asked the Urban Institute to measure the cross-utilization patterns that are happening on campus. And we've done so over the last 18 months. So Dorothy's group, along with 4 other partners, came a lot later. So they really looked at data that we had captured when we had 9 partners. So we just added 5 new partners, but the 9 partners that we have there. And
just so everyone understands,
Sure.
the 9 partners are. Can you
Yes.
run through them?
Yeah,
I can do most of them, but I don't want to.
I'll be pretty brief. So we have Covenant House, Washington. So Building Bridges Across the River is the leading nonprofit that manages the partnership, which I'm the president of that organization. You have Covenant House, Washington, that has its own standalone building on our campus, 30,000 feet. Inside the building that we have our offices, we have the Boys and Girls Clubs. We have the Washington School for Girls. We have the Levine School of Music. We have the Washington Ballet. Right there on our campus. We have DC Central Kitchen, which we just added. It was our 14th partner. Now they have their facility that they do culinary arts training, and we have a cafe that they manage. Across the parking lot, we have the Phillips Collection. We have Children's National that has about 15,000 square feet there. The Bishop Walker School for Boys. And above them, we have Apple Tree Early Learning Institute. On the lower level, we have the David Lynch Foundation that does transcendental meditation. So we have all of that on one campus. When you enter the campus as someone coming to any one of these partners, the opportunity for you to cross-pollinate, to fly around like a bee in a flowering pot is really easy. And we want to facilitate that. So we also want to measure that.
Have most people been to the ARC? Raise your hand if you've been there.
Great, we have
about half.
So we know, and the other half, I'll see you there tomorrow. So we're measuring this pattern because we want to have an opportunity to present to the world what we are doing, and to make it easier for anyone else who has land who want to bring partners together to work for the betterment of the community. So we have some measurements from Urban Institute that have led us to some best practices with cross utilization. So thank you for asking me about that. We're on our way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any questions out here that I can? What do you think DC needs to do to raise its awareness beyond the monuments? So people come to town and they want to go see, and I mean, you know, you want people to go see Lincoln and Vietnam and Library of Congress, but we also want them to do arts things while they're here.
Well, and I know, and we're grateful for the opportunity to collaborate with Destination DC and all of there's a lot of effort, but I think we really got to ramp it up in terms of, so we had Phillips Collection or Woolly Mammoth or Studio Theater and all of these institutions, none of us are rolling in dough. And so every year it's a struggle to, you know, meet that bottom line for your operating budget and to do quality work. I think, and I'm just inventing this right now, but you know, when I talk about marketing and communications dollars, could there be a concerted citywide effort to lift up all of these boats? Something that would really have would give us that powerful megaphone here within the DMV, but nationally. I mean, I really think what's happening here in terms of the arts is really important. But, you know, I think that really demands some thought. It demands some leadership, and that leadership has to come from a real respect of the arts organizations, these major arts organizations who are, you know, offering the quality work, the jobs, the impact. So that's, I don't know. It was just an idea.
So I think it can get better, right? But I see this ship turning. You know, I think that there's a lot of energy that we, like this conference today, that we are not a one industry town, a government town, and that there's much more sensibility about what the campaign that Destination DC does is the real DC or cool DC, or like DC is what's DC outside those borders of the monuments. So I don't think any of us expect people who visit here not to see those monuments. I mean, certainly that's where I take family when they come. But there's also the new monuments, the African American Museum, you know, as a big example of how different stories are being told there too.
Absolutely.
So, but I see DC, you know, getting under this curve of creativity. There's a lot of support from the mayor, as you can see here today, about DC's creative economy and how it works and what it needs to do. And that stands right next to the nonprofit museum, theater economies, you know, that have been steadily working in DC and building the cultural capital that we are. So it's never enough. I want more too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I do see that the city, you know, in reflection, has really changed dramatically.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because you think about the monuments and I think bait and switch, because I think we have a real richness here, and I think let's come for the monuments and then let's show you the people.
Right.
Let's show you the diversity. Let's show you the synergies, the partnerships, the culture. So I think yes, reverberation and messaging and marketing and having a platform, a megaphone, absolutely. Currently, my strategy is bait and switch, and I'll use it until we get the
It might be a strategy that works for a really long time.
Yeah.
You have another. I mean, you sort of have, Rahsaan, two things, because we're talking about overall Washington, bringing it up. And I will say this: I don't think this will ever happen, but I wish instead of calling it the DMV, we could call it the DVM. Because for the magazine, we always, because it says Washingtonian, we don't want to repeat Washington on the cover, but then every time we put DMV, everyone thinks of Department of Motor Vehicles.
Right.
So we never, I mean, maybe we'll break down at some point and put DMV on the cover.
That's the idea that comes out today.
But, you know, most powerful women in the DMV, it sounds like, you know, well, the ticket processing lady, you better really pay attention to her because, you know, it's a real, real marketing issue, and I'm not sure how it got to be. Can't we just make it DVM? We'll see. If I wave my magic wand, we can turn it around. But you also, can you talk about Ward 7 and Ward 8 a little bit? Because this table, but there's to go there, and that, you know, restaurants, what can we do to lift Ward 7 and 8? Will the Navy Yard and the wharf bleed over? So it's sort of two things I see. It's helping the people, helping the, I mean, there's some great middle class and upper middle class in Ward 7 and 8 that people don't know about, but there's also a lot of poverty that we want to lift people out of. So there's that tension between lifting people out and also getting people to come.
Absolutely. So let me, a part of the reason why.
It's a big question, sorry.
No, it's a big question, but a part of the reason why I took this job is because I understand and recognize what's conspicuous in our name is our mission, which is building bridges. We build bridges, period. So we're building a physical bridge right now, but we've been building these metaphorical bridges for years. The organization was started in 1997 by Christopher Smith, who's a local developer. To answer your question, it really is about people, right? So how do we build those bridges that will bring people from the west side of the river over to the east side? I think it's having that point of connection, that similarity, that commonality. It's not just about having something sexy on the other side that you have to go see. For example, there have been investments on that side with the Mystics.
The Mystics,
and they're in the finals. And we have seen a lot of people come across. Yeah, exactly. We've seen a lot of people come across for that reason. But as Dorothy mentioned, you know, there is a cultural significance that's there that I believe once we begin to share the richness there and look at how to connect people to come and experience that, it's about the human experience and it's about the narratives. I think if you were to, unfortunately, when you read the Washington Post, and I'm not picking on the Post, when you read periodicals, the doom and gloom is what you see on the front pages. We don't get articles about the young people who are matriculating through high school and college and now working at THEARC as our set design, stage manager, and doing wonderful things to impact that community. We don't hear about the restaurants that are thriving because they're partnering with local nonprofits and local businesses. So again, I think it resides in people, and it resides in a narrative of connection and similarity and commonality. And we have more things in common than we have that separate us. And so the genius is to reverberate that message. And we've seen it already. I think the Bridge Park will do a lot. We're running it. We have equity in the center. We're looking at building relationships, period. How we go about doing that, the estimation is that 1.2, 1.3 million will visit the park each year. How do we amplify the voices on the Ward 7 and Ward 8 side so people see the beauty and richness of those communities and they want to come?
Anecdotally, do you see people going, you know, Navy Yard more, coming to baseball stadium more? Because that was, you know, positioned, or Buzzard's Point. Yep. Do you feel that anecdotally that they're starting to be more connected?
Yeah. So we have seen. We have a festival called the Anacostia River Festival that we host each and every year. It bookends the Cherry Blossom Festival, right? So we have seen that community, Ward 7 and Ward 8, come out in mass, over 9,000 people. And that was not just solely the Ward 7 and Ward 8 community. People from Ward 6 came over. People from Ward 5, people traveled as far as Ward 1. So there is that festival was to activate the space by the Bridge Park, but it really was about bringing people together. Yeah. And so that alone has changed kind of the narrative about that area. And so we hope to do more of that and be intentional about making those connections. So
yeah, it's true that the bringing people together is really important. You know, that exhibition around immigration that was up for 4 months during the spring, summer. it brought people into the museum who were new, I think, to us. You know, we worked with a lot of immigrant communities, Refugees International. My mind goes blank. I mean, we just had tons of not just advocacy groups or you know, people doing feet on the ground.
And it wasn't at the Phillips, it was down.
No, this was at the Phillips.
Oh, the one at the, when it was at, 'cause there was also when it was, wasn't it also down?
Yeah, that was that virtual reality experience. But it's kind of a game changer. It also reflects back on you. So now we're instituting, and now we're having a debate, which language, but you know, bilingual labels, audio tour, and you know, bilingual audio tour, just the kind of transformative impact that the dialogues have, not on other people, but on yourself, on your organization, which, you know, that's what diversity and equity and inclusion is all about, because it's a better community. But like in November, and this is one of our annual sort of key projects, our international forum, we've tackled immigration, climate change, you know, new impact philanthropy, bigger topics, and we you know, embrace those once a year. And this year, it's around the theme of art and wellness. It's on November 14th in the evening. Come on down. It's about it's keyed to Veterans Day. So we're working with the very robust Student Veterans Organization at UMD. We're working with Jane Chu, who is the now former head of NEA, but now she's an arts consultant at PBS, who helped to foster the federal government's investment in veterans' art and health issues. She's talking with a practitioner. We've got some folks from Ward 7 and 8 who have created groups. So it's that kind of, you know, how can we use this triangle of College Park, Ward 8, 21st Street to bring diverse and impactful people together over really urgent issues? And I find that, so I'm all with you, Rahsaan.
Yeah.
I mean, that idea that the convergence of voices is really powerful.
And there's a microcosm of this happening every day on campus, right? So we boast about 100,000 people a year to that campus. Those are not all Ward 7 and Ward 8 residents. Those are you. Those are people who come for the theater. Those are people who are coming to learn more about the partnerships. Those are people who are coming to look at our farm. I mean, there are people visit just to come and see what's happening there. We have a stage and a platform and a template for this, and I believe it really resides in love, right? So it's about getting the love back and putting people, connecting people so that they understand where the love resides. And it's not in the monuments, yes, but the monuments are about people. I mean, at the end of the day. And so if we can work intentionally to ensure that people are connected, I'm excited about what is to come. And the city will be closely knitted for years to come, I believe.
I'm going to put in a plug for the Anacostia River, because that is the bridge that you're going over. And thanks in part to the bag tax and other things, it is much, much cleaner than people realize it is. My kids say, I come from a sailing
Swimmable by
family.
2025.
What?
Swimmable by
2025. Well, my kids sail there on the Anacostia every day, 5 days a week. So they unfortunately swim in it when they capsize, but that happens. So,
The dolphins are mating.
Yeah, but the river is really nice if you're down there, and when people see it now on the wharf. I was there last night before the game. The park on the other side, Anacostia Park, is beautiful.
Absolutely.
It is beautiful. The Park Service has done such a great job with it.
Absolutely.
So I do think, in terms of us being a global city, having waterfront is important to every global city, whether what kind of river or thing it is. And it's also schools and education.
Yes.
So we're not going to be a great city, and we're not going to be able to lift our city, but all of you work. How hard or easy is it to work with DC Public Schools?
Yeah. You.
Well, many of the theaters have partnerships with DC Public Schools, but everything could always be better, right? So I think one of the things they struggle with is there are schools who are really great public, partnership schools, and there are schools that just don't have capacity to create those partnerships. And those are the schools we have to worry about. It's the ones who don't have the infrastructure to make those connections, to get a theater to come and work with the kids, to form a partnership with the Reach. Those are the ones that are being left behind. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, you have, first of all, you have principals and teachers under a lot of pressure, time pressure, money pressure, pressure. So we've developed a technique where you really, we work deep and consistent in all like grades in a school. So you have to have the buy-in from the principal. Now, if the principal moves, then you have to sort of start over again. And so you work consistently over several years with each of the teachers with an arts integration model. So you're not the fluff, on the margins. Oh, damn, those people from the Phillips are coming again. I got to give over 20 minutes. Instead, were you teaching them, helping them to design their own curriculum to use art to teach that core subject better. And they love it because we're helping them. We're not annoying them. So once you get that kind of buy-in, and if there is some leadership consistency in a school, then it really has sustainable impact to help the teachers and students achieve what they're mandated to do anyway, and under pressure from the DCPS to achieve. So that's how we try to find a perch that could be impactful, meaningful, and sustainable.
I would think they love you because you're wraparound services.
Yeah, so we have a different experience, and I think we've taken the dispositionally, we've taken the approach of enrichment services after school. We complement, we help where we can, and I think the real issue, and you mentioned it perfectly, is the inconsistency in infrastructure capacities and leadership among the schools that we interact with, and so it's been somewhat of a challenge. But they can always come on our campus, always connect with our partners to leverage those services. So we welcome that.
Questions?
So when we talk about art, one industry is always left from the table, and that's always film and photography, new media. How do we incorporate that so people see it more? Because there's well over 40 to 60 film festivals within the region, so film is a big industry here, but it's always left out of the conversation.
You can take a seat, right?
Yeah, so that is the question. How film festivals and film are.
Yeah, I think that's
very
somewhat,
important.
it's another huge industry in the city, and we're very fortunate to have so many film festivals, so many different kinds, the Independent Film Festival, the Environmental Film Festival. That's absolutely true.
We always
are
partner.
the
We're always
center for
partnering.
documentary, for people making documentaries.
But it's a really good point. I think it's a really vital part of the creative economy. And yeah, I'm actually really glad you asked that question because it kind of provokes something. I mean, my dream, so I've got this 180-seat auditorium. Most people don't know that.
That's way down there.
That's way down there. The slowest elevator in the Western Hemisphere. Don't ask me. But I've always wanted my folks, all 2 or 1.5 programming people. But I'd love to have the Phillips be a home for films. It's kind of missing in that neighborhood. People have come to me and asked about it. I just don't have the infrastructure to pull that off. But we do films. We do films all the time, like keyed into, like we had great film series. I think it was once a week during the show. So we do that, but it's little bits and pieces. It would be great to have a kind of a consistent. So, email me.
Consistency.
Yeah.
I saw a question over here.
Mike?
I feel like I've been living here almost 20 years. I've lost track. And I feel like the city's changed tremendously. However, when I talk to anyone outside of DC, their views are still the same. They're like, oh, I went to a recent reunion in California, and the first question of everyone was like, where do you live? And I said DC, and it was like a conversation ender. No one asked me. They're like, oh, okay. And I felt like, wow, this is a lot of work to get people to know more about it. And or other questions, like, oh, do you work for the government? No, I don't. No, I don't. So I guess I'm wondering, are there any organizations or government agencies that are tasked with the branding of DC and getting the word out
where I was going
to
Yeah.
other?
I mean, it really is Destination
It's Destination DC that is works on this on a marketing level, and I don't disagree. I was just at a visit to my home in Illinois where I grew up, and I often get the same, like, what to make of that. And the first thing I always start with is how beautiful this city is. I mean, it's one of the most beautiful cities in the country.
Most people don't know, we used to be known as the city of trees. That was our, brotherly love was Philly. We were known as the city of trees.
And
then it just
beautiful.
And
fell away.
Sort of despite all the, the bad news or the sensibility about the city, the number of tourists that we're having come into the city is still on par and continues to grow. So they're doing a great job. We just got to
I will say,
more.
you don't see all the campaigns that Destination DC does outside of DC, because you live in DC.
Right, yeah.
But they have a huge program that targets the rest of the country to come here. I'm just chiming in, but I also think what helps is, obviously Amazon moving helps, but we also have other, Hilton moved here, Marriott's here. I'm forgetting, Lockheed, but companies that people do know, we have major ones, and more keep
Relocating.
moving and coming here. I'm trying to think of the food one that just came. Nestle, thank you. Yeah, I usually don't forget chocolate, but so I think that does help with the whole biosphere, but it's a good point.
But when you see those iconic images every night on the news,
I know,
it's hard to forget.
it's hard, yeah.
Right.
It's an imprinting that we almost,
I see one in the back.
it's hard to combat.
We have 5 minutes.
Hi, I would be remiss if I didn't introduce myself. I'm Tara from Destination DC. So to talk about two things, Marcom dollars are always, we want more of them. As we all know, we're just a district, so we get funded by district, where we compete with cities like New York that get city and state funding. So when we compare our Convention Bureau and Visitors Bureau to other major cities, not only in the US, but globally, think London, Dubai, that we compete against, we're significantly underfunded. But two campaigns.
But you punch way above your weight.
We do. So what I wanted to say is we actually get recognized for our marketing often. We just got several, I think it's 5 awards for our videos. And so if you check out what Amy mentioned, Discover the Real DC is the new campaign. We had a Discover the Arts District video series. So we followed locals. We did director of the ballet, a museum curator, a muralist, street artist, a DJ, and chefs. And we talked about their real Washington, D.C. experience. And so we used that. And from a business event side, which is one thing I wanted to touch on too, is we try to bring meetings and conventions to the district or the capital regions. That was going to be something else I said. We started marketing, instead of saying DMV, which people don't know, internationally, they don't know the district, they know Washington, which is obviously then a different state, and that causes confusion. So we say the capital region, or Capital Region USA. But from business events, we have a whole connected campaign. So we say we're the connected capital, and the tagline is where economics, academics, and culture unite. And so our message of why bringing a meeting or convention to Washington, D.C., yes, we have all these amazing monuments and neighborhoods, but it's also where thought leaders from diversity of perspective can be in one room together for a cause. And so we would love for you to check that out, but obviously partnerships, we can only raise the profile with involvement from everybody, so we always welcome that. So check us out and we'll make sure you're connected.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, one last one in the back, and then we've got to wrap it up.
Hi, my name's Jesse. I run a competitive karaoke league here in DC.
Wow. Seriously?
Yeah, district karaoke, if you haven't heard of it.
That's fantastic.
My question is really, because I come from a music space and I'm operating mostly in bars and restaurants. And a lot of you are connected to larger institutional arts organizations, things like that. One of the observations I see is, we're not people that are musicians and artists and people who want to do videos, I think, are sometimes struggling for space. Because there's not a lot of cheap space. And bars are being squeezed, restaurants are being squeezed because rent prices are going so up, because the only people who can pay now rent to be in commercial space are banks. So I'd love to hear what your perspectives are, coming from a different side of that conversation where we're always trying to hustle. Like, will you pay me $100 a week, $150 a week just to come in, or a band who might make a little bit more, and then still sometimes get the clothes because they just want to sell more more football or whatnot. So I don't know if that's something you all can comment on, but I'm curious about that interface between who we are as the amateur kind of arts community needing more space and eyes. So I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I'm kind of, Leah will correct me, my staff will correct me if I get something wrong, but like on first Thursday of every month is our Phillips After 5, where we're open late every Thursday, but we really go all out to have some kind of intelligent programming. So it's the art, it's food, it's drink, it's music, it's performance, it's film, and wrapped into a coherent, and you have to buy your tickets online because otherwise we had too many lines around the block. So it's a great success. We always engage. On Thursday, there's a go-go band. She says, yep. And there's a film downstairs, et cetera, et cetera. So in a small way, we offer those opportunities. We're performing in a kind of very interactive setting in our music room or in the auditorium, sometimes in the outdoors. But I think we really try to make those events very community-oriented, to offer a stage and a welcoming place.
Yeah, I don't think space is really, it might seem like your issue, but there's so much space, and you look at things like REI that build in, space with their building. The banks are doing that. One of the DC's great partnerships is JP Morgan Chase. They have, now spaces like where they're building east of the river where communities can meet. It's the audience that the bar gives you. So if you get a big enough audience, people will give you the space. So there's a chicken and the egg. But the trend is towards businesses building extra spaces. And so hopefully, I think the trend is moving in the right direction.
But the economics aren't, it's an economic question, I think. The ability to have enough to find, the bar's not going to give it to you because, as you said, they're not making money, and you can't bring it to the table. So where can we find this happy intersection? So I think actually the city could do some more work in terms of making it so if there is, because there's so much available retail space and office space now, how can we leverage dollars from the landlords and people who own that building to get those spaces to be activated? Right, like I think that there's influx of, where restaurants can't afford, local restaurants can't afford 14th Street anymore. Like that's a problem. Right. And that's a citywide problem that we need to solve, because if we're gonna be local, real local, we're gonna have to have musicians. There's nothing more local than a local musician, a local actor, and theaters are also, there's a lot of theaters with space. Most of it's usually almost very activated, but there's a lot of theaters who are looking for space on a regular basis. They have work they want to put on and they don't have a space.
Let me, because I'm getting the hook over here. I agree with you, but I also think that what the three of you bring is really, really a lot of hope for our region. The work that all of you are doing is incredible. We have challenges, but thank you to all three of you for helping to lift our city and providing culture both down to the littlest of kids to the biggest of kids. Thank you, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Cathy.
Daniel.
Hey, how are you?
Good to see you.
Yes, good to see you.
I saw you in the Future of Mobility, but you were in a conversation. But
I'm trying to remember the event.
Qualcomm Hill conversation. The Hill event at the Reagan Building.
Yeah. How do you like that, by the way? I caught up with the folks from Qualcomm.
Yeah, it was good. I'm about to give remarks, but are you going to be around?
Yeah, where are you going?
Right in here. Because I'll find it.
But that's how